Hi YouTube, my name's Sean Connors and welcome back to Outsiders, and today we're going to be talking a bit more about the retro system. I've gone into a bit more depth around it and I want to flesh out a few more thoughts that have actually struck me as I've begun designing it. So without further ado, these are the first thoughts. So to design a basic character with the principle in mind, this is what you would do. You would roll 3d20. Now depending on the scores will determine a couple of factors. The first thing is that you have to assign them to the three schools. So let's assume a scenario where somebody's rolled a 15, a 9 and a 19. They've decided that for them the primary school is going to be combat. It doesn't really matter. The secondary school is going to be stealth and the third school is going to be magic. But they're going to assign them initially to those areas to reflect their natural talent with it, or potential natural talent. So if we look at our chart now, it's going to determine the actual value here. So we take the 15. You'll notice what I've done, and I hope this comes off the page, but I'll explain it. I've divided up now the chart more accurately a little bit to signify what I'm trying to do. So between the die 4 and a die 6 at the halfway point, which is 7, you now get a d4 plus 1. So that would be d4 plus 1. From 6 to 8 at a halfway point, which is 14, you get a default dice at 14, which basically means you get roll d6 plus 1. So that's very simply how it is. So if somebody rolled a 15, which is what we're talking about here, that would put them there, which is default. So it's d6 plus 1. So that's simple enough. The 9 would yield a d4 plus 1, and the 19 would yield a d8. Now, because it's backgrounds, those are automatically maximums. So we know that the d6 plus 1 is a 7, the d4 plus 1 is a 5, so that makes 12, and the d8 makes another 8, makes 20. We double that because it's designing a background character, and we have 40 background points to play with. Although we've assigned them the highest score in combat, our next score in stealth, and the next score in magic, we haven't opened up the paths yet. We have to pay for that through background. So to go into combat, which is the cheapest one, costs only 4 background points. My character wants to be somebody who's going to specialise in, primarily at the beginning of the game, I want him to specialise in combat and stealth only. So I'm going to pay the 10 points and open up both those skill arcs. I've got basic skills that everybody can access, but once I open the path up, I can access more skills and develop my skills in more general way. So that costs me 10 points to open them up. 4 for combat, 6 for stealth, it would be 8 for magic. So I've now got 30 points left to design my character. So I hope that makes sense. So that's a little bit around the beginning. Now how you would take a skill is fairly simple. Let's take a default skill. Let's just do that next. I think this is probably the cleverest part so far that really works. So let's assume at this point that obviously my favourite area is combat. So my default dice is d8, if you remember. So with most combat related skills, even untrained, technically there are certain skills you can only get by opening them. I get a default dice of d8. So for basic attacks I get d8. Now I want to specialise my character, and he wants to take a great axe. I haven't divided the weapons up any further than this at the moment. But however, let's assume he takes a great axe. To specialise it further, this is how the tree would work to use your background points. To take the d8 to the next level, so to make it a d8 plus 1, because this is the only time in the game where experience points, this is the only time in the game where background points work very different than experience points, only at the very beginning of designing, which we'll cover off experience in a moment. But to take the d8 to a d8 plus 1 costs 1 point of background points. To take the d8 to a new d10 costs a further 2, so far he's used up 3 background points. To take the d10 to d10 plus 1 would need a further 3 background points, which now makes it 5 background points. I want to go further, so I've decided I'm going to go a little bit further than this, and I want to then go to a d12, so it costs me a further 4 more points. In total it's cost me 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 3 is 6, yeah? 6 plus 4 is 10. So far in all it's cost me 10 background points to get a d12. I could go further, but a d12 dice in Great Axe sounds pretty good to me. I've spent a lot of points. It's cost me 10 background points. I've only got 20 left now if you remember the beginning of the game. So that in default is pretty much how it works. Now I might have to scale that back because that might be too much. But hopefully what that's showing is the principle behind the mechanics of the game. The other thing I want to finally touch on before I must go, won't be one moment, is to look at the general character sheet in general. Now this isn't fleshed out, but what I wanted to signify is some of the step processes that I've gone through designing the game. So you have the paths, the combat, stealth and magic, and we've decided that, and my daughter helped me a little bit with this, which is quite good, is that each of these areas will have 2 circles attached to the side. One will signify the actual roll you made, so like 15, and the next one would signify the default dice. Below that, originally I was going to put attack, defense, and wounds, but I realised they can all get lumped under the combat under default dice, and I'll probably just have one more area of specialism, which will probably be something like luck, speed, and maybe general skills. But I haven't completely decided that yet. I'm still fleshing out the parts. So hopefully what you're seeing is the start of the shape of the character coming together. I think what we've really already got here is a mechanic that clearly works. We know about the opposed rolls. We can clearly see that the actual mechanics are beginning to take shape in the terms of how you use your background points. Or one thing I was going to cover off before I go is experience points, how that would work beyond the background area. So let's assume you've already got let's assume I've already got a skill that's a default dice. Let's say it's background skill, let's say it's climbing, default dice 6, and it's exactly a 6. If I want to take that 6 and start developing experience points into it to improve it beyond background, it would work this way. So here's the default 6. You'll notice to move it 1 point across is going to cost me 11 XP. The reason that works that way is obviously 4 plus 6 to get to the default dice of D6, and then you're moving it towards the next default, yeah? If that makes sense to you, I hope it does. So it's going to cost 11 XP to move it 1 notch across, a further 12, which now totals 23, to move it another notch, a further 13 to move it 1 more notch, which now means 26, a further notch if I want to get the next default, which would be D6 plus 1. So that's so far 23, 23, 33, 36, plus a further 14. It cost me 50 XP to get that default point there. So 50 XP will mean now that my climbing skill moves from a D6 to a +1. So you can see how experience will work with every single skill based off this chart. It's very easy to work out. Everybody can run 20. Everybody can put 4 dots down, 6 dots down, 8 dots down, 10 dots down at home, 12 dots down, 20 dots down, and actually 60 dots in total, and work out exactly what the numbers mean. I broke down one area. So to move from 4 to 6 costs 47 XP. To move from 6 to 8 fully costs 106, and so on. The mechanic works very well, and it then gives us a basis for actually working out XP to award in sessions, and it starts fleshing out the whole campaign really. It really starts to bite down on the mechanics. So I like the way it's going. I think you'll agree it's good steps forward, and by the time we next speak, I'm hoping to have it nailed in terms of the complete look of it, the final touches of it. I'm going to go into more detail around some of the more tricky areas, how the paths work, and the magic, of course, will be a separate video. But so far, it's coming together nicely. Anyway, I thought I'd share that with you today. I must dash. Thank you very much for your time. Happy gaming, and I'll see you next time on one of my videos. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.